wait for Vicky.
Just do this one, then you can do the next one. Which is using snakes.
The school was built in 1891, opened April 1892, and it was a working school up until 1985.
Cool.
So not bad. Not bad. Nice building.
Yeah. I think going to the parade.
Come on then.
Exactly. Winter or summer. Who would have lived here? A widow. This is the widow's cottage. Each cottage has a story, and this is the widow's cottage. And she's only allowed to keep this cottage because her son works and looks after the pig farmers. If she hadn't had a son who was in the pit, 7 days after her husband had been killed in the accident, she would have been evicted from the house. And if she hadn't anywhere to go, she would have ended up in a workhouse. That's why this one is more sparsely furnished than the other houses in the terrace. Yeah. But at least she had a roof overhead, She had a free comb once fortnight. Yeah.
That kind of house would be from what decade?
Sorry, Pat.
So it would be in the 20th century, but which decade?
This is 1913. 1913, these are the cottages in 1913. This is how we're building the stories. And then we're getting better. And now we now have 1950s.
Yeah.
The 1950s.
So I'm shooting. I've been around this village now, second visit, and now seen a tin bath.
Yes, hang on.
Do you not buy it now? That's a so, or a bath.
It's a bath.
You can't bath in that.
You can.
You're
got to
standing
stand
up.
up.
People back at this point in time in 1913 are smaller in stature than we are today.
That's what I'd say. Yeah.
Exactly. You might have come across my colleague wandering about. He's got a flat cap on, Billy. He's about the stature that people were then. Not to say that there were bigger people, because there were, but the majority were the stature that he is.
It's really not, you're taking off.
That's a locking pin, so when it's screwed together it can't be opened. Yeah. So we can strip that part down. There'll be 2 gauzes within there, so if one fails you have a backup and you have a glass tube. Then what's missing is a couple of asbestos rings to get a good seal. So you can clean all the different parts on the lamp cleaning machine there. That was usually steam operated. You'd simply get different parts of the lamp, put them on different bits, different brushes, and you can use that bit there to brush the outside up.
So is this so there's no naked flame? So
That's the idea behind it, yeah. Your early light source, going back to say 1800, would be a candle underground or a primitive oil lamp. There'd be an oil lamp base, there'd be a wick, that'd be a flame. If you have any methane in the coal and that escapes, it's likely to cause an explosion. And one of the worst ones they had in that time period was 1812, 9.5 miles northeast of here, fell in colliery disaster. That killed around 88 men underground. 45 minutes later, there was a rescue attempt causing a second explosion, that time coal dust rather than methane, that killed another 4 men. And 2 of them were flung out of the shaft about 300 feet. So it gives an idea how powerful the blasts were. That prompted the lamp development around 1812, 13, 14. By 1815 and 1816 you have 2 lamps. You have the Davy lamp and the Stevenson lamp, which locally we call the Geordie lamp. So that would be a Davy lamp. It's an iron wire mesh gauze covering the flame. Air can get in, the flame can burn. You can see the flame through the gauze. A little amount of gas can get in, and you might get a brief flare up, but it can't pull the oxygen in quick enough, so the flame tends to go out. And then any excess heat gets trapped by the gauze, the flame shouldn't escape, any gas or coal left above shouldn't explode. That's a Davy lamp. A Stevenson lamp is the same thing with a glass tube in the middle and a gauze on top. The early ones weren't a gauze, they were a paper filter. The later ones had a gauze like Davy. So we'll build that back up. So the later ones also have 2 gauzes for redundancy, so if one fails, you've got another one still intact. So we'll screw that on. That part there came in around 1870, that's a French Marceau lamp, so it protects the fragile gauze within. That lock and pin will secure it, so when it's all assembled, you can't gain access to the bits inside. Bit of a nightmare finding where it locks in. There we go, got it. Screw that in. And when it's locked, you're not getting in there, that's sealed. You had a problem with early lamps where you could open them underground. You had men opening them to light cigarettes, contraband. The lamp was fine, we became the problem. But that was in use from roughly 1815 till 2015, about 199, 200 years, saved tens of thousands of miners' lives. Right, we'll have a look down the pit now. Please keep your hard hats on for the whole tour and prepare the bend. This gets down to 4'6" for the majority of the tour. We're in there about 5 minutes. If it's too low or you don't like it, you can walk out anytime. The bottom 6 foot wide, 3 foot deep by 1.5 foot high. If it's soft coal, it would fall in by itself afterwards. If it's hard, it'll stay in place. So you'll then move the machine out, drill some holes by hand and pack them full of dynamite. When you blast that, it should break the coal up into quite large chunks and fall down. You can then come back, check the integrity of the workings. If it's safe, you can get a shovel under, load your coal tubs like the ones you may have seen on the surface, and then young lads can push them so far, ponies might drag them, or you may even have a hauler moving sets of tubs all the way back to the surface. So that's a lot quicker than working by hand, pick and shovel. You're on piecework, so the more you mine, the more you get paid. You wouldn't want to work on these though. They're noisy, 4 times louder than a modern day road drill. They'll go in depth in a matter of years working on them. Also, there's no suppression of dust. So you're breathing in all of that coal dust and stone dust. Long term, that could lower your life expectancy from the mid-60s to the early 30s, mid-40s. So they didn't like them. They gave them a nickname. They called them widow makers. But you'd rarely see them being used. By 1913, in pits like this, they've been working for over 100 years. So they've tended to go for the thicker coal seams first, and then later on they're working the smaller coal seams. Across Durham, 8 out of 10 men in 1913 were working below 2'6". So you're probably going to work that by hand rather than putting the heavy machinery on. It wouldn't fit, it's too big. Like pine wood, because they're noisy, if they're going to break, they tend to creak first. When you hear that noise, you can hopefully escape before it collapses. Now the roof would usually be at 2'6" or lower. That's where most men are working. The lowest you'd see is 18 inches, roughly where your knees are. So that would look a bit like that. To work that, you'd work by yourself. You'd crawl in on your hands and feet and belly, perhaps working in water, mud, rust and the men's toilet. You'd lie on a shoulder cracket, so you're out the water, you'd take your hand pick and you'd hack the coal sideways, working like that. Your big danger is stone fall from above. That can be quite heavy. There'd be a serious accident somewhere in Britain, usually every 5 minutes from stone fall.
Every 5 minutes?
Every 5 minutes somewhere in the country. You had a lot of men working underground. In Durham alone, we had 168,000 men working in the pits in 1913. Up and down the country, I think it's about 2 million men working. A lot of men, a lot of ponies as well. So stone fall's a big danger. As you're mining the coal, you're also trying to separate coal from stone, kick the coal alongside your body and make a pile by your feet. You're blocking yourself in. So when it gets too much, you're down tools. You'll shuffle over, take your shovel and begin loading the coal up over into the wading tubs. It's hard work and you wouldn't be able to see what you're doing. In gassy pits, you couldn't use a candle or a carbide lamp. You wouldn't have electricity on the coal face, so you're limited to your flame safe lamp. That would have looked something like this.
Wow.
It's a bit dark, isn't it?
Just a bit. It takes half an hour for your eyes to fully adjust. I hope you have no plans. So looking around, what can you see at the moment?
Black.
Order! Halt! Front rank. Cover. Arms. Right. Face. Break.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, as you all know, you can read the newspapers. The year is 1814. There's currently scandal involving royal princes in the press. We suffer under a corrupt Tory government. So some things never change.
Order!
Most importantly, however, in the news, you will also know that we have just defeated the French and Napoleon Bonaparte. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, we've just defeated the French. Of course. Before you, you have a platoon of His Britannic Majesty's 68th Durham Regiment of Light Infantry. The regiment was just deployed in 1808 and 1809 to the Valhieran campaign. From there, it was sent to Spain, fought all the way up from the peninsula, and has lost, obviously, lots of men fighting in those campaigns. We are now returned back at the end of the war to the United Kingdom, where we are recruiting to full strength. But we are to set sail to Canada, where we are still at war with the Americans, where we will soon defeat the Americans as we have beaten the French and every other power who comes against the King's enemies. We're going to defeat the Americans, ladies and gentlemen.
Yay!
So as I say, we are looking for recruits. We're looking for wise men, Welshmen, Irish, Scots, English, true Britons, one and all. And we'll even take people from other countries as well. Our recruitment standards are not very high. So is anybody here whose heart treads the path to glory, who wants to go to Canada, visit foreign lands, try foreign food, meet foreign ladies?
Oh, yeah.
Hey!
Then come and join the British Army. And of course, as well as going to those places, we'll dress you in a spanking, fantastic uniform. Upon your head, you will wear a felt cap. Have the marks of light infantry. So these are not just standard infantrymen, these are light infantry, ladies and gentlemen. They are thinking men. Theoretically. You'll have a green plume that marks you as a light infantryman. You will have a bugle horn badge. The bugle horn badge is important because when the men form into what's known as extended order, which we'll demonstrate later, we need a bugle to carry the orders over a large area. But you can no longer just shout the orders, and therefore the bugle represents light infantrymen.
Shoulder! Up!
You'll wear the red coat, famous for the British soldier for 300 years. Around your legs, we'll have grey trousers. These are grey trousers which are worn by the infantry wherever they are fighting. So whether you're in Spain, France, Canada, India, you will wear grey trousers. And I can promise you on a hot day, they are not very comfortable. Around your chest, you'll have the tools of your trade.
Front rank. Right.
Cartridge box carrying 60
Hey.
rounds of ball ammunition. And a bayonet with 17 inches of fluted steel.
Bet! Sorry. Order! Arms! Bet! Bayonet!
Fluted, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, it has grooves on the side, so that when it goes into the King's enemy, whether you be a Frenchman, American, or anybody else, blood runs out, it does not get stuck with suction, allowing you to quickly kill your enemy, move on, and kill more of the enemy.
Order! Arms!
And of course, you will carry the main tool of your trade,
Unfit!
the Brown Beck musket, .75 caliber flintlock weapon.
Shoulder! Arms! Front rank. Left! Face!
As I say, ladies and gentlemen, we have a number of new recruits, some of which are still coming up to speed. We go through the loading procedure, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, our recruitment standards aren't particularly high right now. No! He loves it, really. We're going to take you through the loading procedure under instruction. This is how we train the men initially. Each movement is giving a specific order.
Handle! Cartridge!
You take a cartridge from your cartridge box, which is a paper cartridge tube. Normally this would have black powder and a soft lead ball at the bottom. Try! Bite off the top, pour a small charge into what's known as the pad. It's important you have all your own teeth. We do not want you gumming off the cartridges in a combat situation. You pour the remainder down the barrel along with the soft ball. You'll be glad to know we're not using ball today. We're not allowed to kill you today. Withdraw! Ramrod! We're going to use the ramrod. It's going to compact all of the paper, the ball and the gunpowder down the bottom of the barrel. Run down! Cartridge! Return! Ramrod! The all-important order to return your ramrod, because we do not want you firing the ramrod down the field at the enemy. Shoulder! The weapon will be useless, and the sergeant will not be very happy. Fall in! Say these weapons are now loaded, so this is how we train the men. They go through every single piece of that procedure until it becomes muscle memory. Squad will retire and fall to the right. Right, face. Now demonstrate some of the tactics of the period. Right. This is how most infantrymen are trained. They're trained to fight in a thin line, 2 ranks deep. Right. The idea being that the officer wants to bring his men to bear in a line. They're going to fire what's known as a volley. All the weapons going off at once, firing a wall of lead at the enemy. Imagine, ladies and gentlemen, this is just a platoon. That is one of the smallest building blocks of the army.
Was behind the guy, so.
Fire, ready? There's these tactics which have stopped the French. As I say, the French have famously defeated every single army in Europe. The Prussians, the Austrians, the Russians have all been defeated by the French. It was only when the French came upon trained British heroes that they were stopped repeatedly in Spain. Every single one of Napoleon's marshals, who the raggedy, rude Napoleon sent to fight us in the peninsula, was defeated one by one by the Duke of Wellington as British soldiers such as these. See, they're now acting as the main infantry would act. They're moving very slowly, very methodically. The idea is he wants to bring all of his men to bear in one go. Doesn't want the line broken. It's very exciting, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen. Right wheel. We're now moving into light infantry tactics, ladies and gentlemen. So I said these are light infantrymen. They're now moving, as you can see, at a quicker pace. They're quicker in their movements. They can get to the enemy quicker, so on and so forth. Volley fire, mate. Ready? Present. Fire! Private low. So, if you can imagine, if you were the French, you would have just received a whole wall of lead towards you. As I say, it's soft lead. It's a ball, so it expands on impact. It will create a larger wound going out than it makes going in. It literally will rip off limbs, tear through holes in your legs. It is a very brutal weapon. So we're now moving in the light infantry tactics. So I said that we'd be using a standard order. The men have now split up. There is gaps in between each file. So the file is the 2 men working together. And the idea being that if you are the French and you're firing at them, the ball will go through the gaps. You also see that they're engaging individually firing. The men are picking out targets, they're aiming, they're picking out people to kill. The idea is that we want to target officers, musicians, and NCOs. The reason why we kill officers is so that the enemy have nobody to give out commands. The reason why we kill musicians, which are people about our age, is because they have orders, so we want musicians dead. We want to break down the ability of the enemy to have command and communication. You can also see, as I said, they are thinking men. So you might be able to hear them talking to one another. They're calling out to each other, telling each other when one is loaded, talking to their file partner, looking out for one another. The front rank man, the person in the front, will always be loaded while the rear rank man is reloading. The idea that they're providing cover for one another. As I say, each of these men should be a trained marksman. We know from the period in the training manuals that these weapons were trained, or these men were trained to hit targets at up to 200 yards with these weapons. We're trained to hit man-sized targets. So there is some accuracy to these weapons. Helen loaded! Stand loaded! The idea, as I say, is that we will disrupt the enemy. So if you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, for the purposes of this display, you are a column of cowardly Frenchmen, unfortunately. I'm sorry to offend you like that, but that is the nature of the beast. So, these men would be hitting your ranks, fitting you out, killing your officers and NCOs, trying to break down your command and communication. They're trying to cause disruption, break your morale. Your NCOs will be falling around you, so as you drive on, these men, as I say, will be picking you out, targeting you, disrupting your ranks. Individual men falling in the ranks. Close! As you drive on, still driving on, the light infantry screen, as in these men, will retreat back to the main line.
Section for the front, part of the right, quick, march. From line to column, right, face.
Behind the skirmishes, you will find the thin line of battalion infantry.
Where is it?
Well, the only thing is parking. The train takes you right to the centre. It's quite easy.
Pre-book and get the right deals. It can be quite cheap.
He's been active for several years. He was in the
they all have babies now, so
I'm quite dressed.
Baby's definitely a baby.
So he was yeah, he was in that for most of the First War, but he was in the Durham as well. He was a recruiting sergeant.
You're not got used to this yet. Once he gets going, you cannot shut him up.
He's just going on. And when he finished moving, he took a breath and started with everything else.
I know that feeling. Yeah. I'll get the odd dig in the ribs.
Yeah. You drive on further, the column will be cheering each other on. You'll be shouting such nonsense as "Vive l'Empereur" and nonsense like that. Because Frenchmen obviously have to cheer each other on to try to drive on the enemy. You drive on closer, the line infantry will deliver a crashing volley. The first few ranks of the French column will fall down dead. You'll start to sort of fall back. Comrades are dying around you, you're not sure what you're doing, so on and so forth. Your officers and NCOs have already been killed. But you will drive on. You know, you're French, you have defeated other conscript armies such as the Austrians and the Prussians, so on and so forth. At this point, the man will charge on the men. Charge! because we killed the Frenchmen, you will have run away. Bayonet charges famously do not come in contact with the enemy.
Dressing on the right.
The point they're making a bayonet charge, you're already pretty much broken. You're going to run.
Dressing on the right. Dress back on the left. Colours at the back. Dress back on the left. Shoulder. Arms. General salute. Present. Arms.
Ladies and gentlemen, a salute to you for watching our short display. The men have to go through some safety practices and make sure their weapons are clear. Once they've done that, some of them will disperse along the line. If you have any further questions about the life of a British soldier in the period of Napoleonic Wars, Durham Light Infantry, they'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Order.
Thank you very much.
Arms. Unpress. Bayonet. Spring runners. Foot rank, shoulder, arms, cover, arms, grip, spread along the crowd.
I'm not so tired, I'm a bit hot. It's heavy, that's the thing, the uniform is very heavy. The gun's quite heavy as well.
Of everything that you see. I don't know if you want to take a picture. Can you see the crack in the wall?
Yeah.
And that's because they wouldn't have had foundations in them days. And it was about a man called Joe Headley. And then because he was such a famous quilter, he became Joe the Quilter. And he was murdered up in the cottage up in Hexham. And it did go worldwide. Robert Peel put the ransom up for 100 guineas, which in 1825 was a lot of money.
That's a fortune.
Yeah. There was no motive. He had nothing. He was claiming off the parish relief. So if you claimed off the parish relief in them days, you literally had nothing. And it was such a brutal murder. And as I say, it did go worldwide. So still to this day, nobody ever found out who did it or why they did it. There was no motive at all. So it's quite sad, but it shut at the minute because we need a new roof doing. So it's not safe to go in. So that's why it shut at the minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a cute.
Yeah.
still running for another 35 minutes. Hopefully you stop. Main entrance, car park.